Chapter 21. Esther, the brave and wise queen of Persia. Esther, a Jewish woman who became the queen of Persia, is a remarkable figure in the Bible. Her story is one of bravery, strategic wisdom, and unwavering faith, which ultimately saved her people from genocide. The Book of Esther recounts her journey from an orphaned girl to a queen who risked her life to protect her fellow Jews. Esther's story begins in the Persian Empire, where the Jews lived in exile. She was initially named Hadassah and was raised by her cousin Mordecai after her parents died. Esther was known for her beauty, which played a significant role in her life. When King Xerxes of Persia was looking for a new queen, Esther and many other young women were taken to the palace. Through a series of events, she found favor in the eyes of the king. She was chosen as his queen, although her Jewish identity remained a secret. The turning point in Esther's story comes with the introduction of Haman, a high-ranking official in the Persian court. Haman harbored a deep hatred for the Jews, particularly Mordecai, who refused to bow down to him. Enraged by this, Haman devised a plan to annihilate all the Jews in the empire. He convinced King Xerxes to issue a decree that on a specific day, all Jews would be killed. The decree was sealed with the king's signet ring, making it irrevocable. When Mordecai learned of the decree, he was devastated. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went into the city, wailing loudly. Upon hearing of Mordecai's distress, Esther sent a messenger to find out what was wrong. Mordecai informed her of Haman's evil plan and urged her to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for her people. This was no small request, as approaching the king without being summoned could result in death, even for the queen. Mordecai's words to Esther were both a challenge and a call to action. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Esther, chapter 4. Verse 14. Esther's initial reaction was fear, but she soon demonstrated remarkable bravery and faith. She asked Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa to fast and pray for 3 days and nights. Esther and her maids would do the same. This period of fasting and prayer was crucial for Esther to seek God's guidance and strength for the daunting task ahead. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in royal robes and approached the king. When he saw her, he was pleased and extended his golden scepter, sparing her life. Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared. Esther waited to reveal her request during the banquet, but invited them to another banquet the following day. This strategic move allowed her to gain favor with the king and provided time for God to work behind the scenes. That night, the king could not sleep and had the Book of Chronicles read to him. He was reminded of how Mordecai had once saved his life by uncovering a plot to assassinate him. The king decided to honor Mordecai, and in an ironic twist, he asked Haman to lead Mordecai through the city, proclaiming his honor. Haman, who had intended to hang Mordecai, was humiliated. At the second banquet, Esther finally revealed her Jewish identity. She pleaded for her people, saying, "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." Esther, chapter 7, verses 3 and 4. Shocked and angered, King Xerxes asked who was responsible for this plot. Esther pointed to Haman, saying, "An adversary and enemy, this vile Haman." Esther chapter 7, verse 6. Enraged, the king ordered Haman to be hanged on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Although Haman was dead, the decree to annihilate the Jews still stood, as it could not be revoked. Esther once again displayed her strategic wisdom by pleading with the king to issue a new decree that would allow the Jews to defend themselves. The king agreed, and a new decree was sent out, allowing the Jews to protect themselves from their enemies. When the appointed day arrived, the Jews successfully defended themselves and were saved from annihilation. Esther's bravery and strategic actions had delivered her people from a great tragedy. The Jewish festival of Purim was established to commemorate this miraculous deliverance, which is still celebrated today. Esther's story is rich with lessons. Firstly, her courage in the face of danger is inspiring. Despite the real risk to her own life, Esther stepped forward to save her people. Her willingness to act, even when afraid, shows the true nature of bravery. Secondly, Esther's wisdom and strategic thinking were critical to her success. She carefully planned her approach to the king and timed her request perfectly. Her actions remind us of the importance of wisdom and patience in dealing with difficult situations. Thirdly, Esther's faith and reliance on prayer were central to her story. By calling for a fast, she demonstrated her dependence on God for guidance and strength. Her story encourages us to seek God's help and wisdom through prayer, especially in challenging times. Moreover, Esther's story highlights the theme of divine providence. Although God's name is not explicitly mentioned in the book of Esther, His hand is evident throughout the events. God's presence and guidance are evident, from Esther's rise to the queen to the king's sleepless night. This reminds us that even when we cannot see it, God is always at work in our lives, orchestrating events for our good and His purposes. This outstanding woman's story also speaks to the power of identity and standing up for one's people. By revealing her Jewish identity, Esther embraced her heritage and took a stand for her community. Her actions remind us of the importance of standing up for what is right, even when complex. Esther, the Jewish queen of Persia, exemplifies bravery, strategic wisdom, and faith. Her courageous actions saved her people from genocide and left a legacy celebrated through the festival of Purim. Esther's story teaches us about the power of courage, the importance of wisdom and prayer, and the assurance of God's providence. Her life inspires us to act with bravery and faith, trusting that God is at work in our lives, guiding us through even the most challenging circumstances.